Well, you're listening to Interchain FM, your Cosmos podcast for all things Web3 Alpha. I'm your host, Chjango Unchained, and I'm here with Jake Hartnell. Jake Hartnell is a very special guest. He is the brains and the coder behind a lot of your favorite projects, some of the most well-known ones, including Juno, DAO, Stargaze. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, mostly those.
Great, let's talk about that. All right, you originally told me your origin story into Cosmos, so why don't we go back there?
Yeah, so it was like all the way back 2017. I had a startup then. I wanted to do like an ICO. I was starting to build stuff on Ethereum and really just seeing the limitations of Ethereum. And I went to this Cal blockchain talk because I'm a Berkeley grad, and Sunny was giving a talk there. He was talking about Cosmos and IBC, and I was like, whoa, this is it. This will actually scale to like billions of transactions. Like rather than trying to shove everything onto like one chain to roll them all, we like split it all up into a bunch of different chains and have trustless communication between them. And I was like, that'll scale to like everything I want to do. So I was like, Cosmos is cool.
Right.
And then like,
and when was this? What year was this?
This was probably like, I think late 2017 or like early 2018. I think it was late 2017.
What were you trying to build on Ethereum?
I was trying to build a data marketplace. So my very first startup, which was a failure, sadly, was we did open source technology for agriculture, and we were trying to like allow people to sort of monetize their data. Then the market crashed, and my company got acqui-hired, and I had to go work in the Web 2 world for a while, and that was not fun.
What was it acqui-hired by?
Can't talk about it. I signed like NDAs, and
Web 2.
It's Web 2. It sucked. But really wanted to just work in crypto so that I could spend all my nights just like playing around with Cosmos and like writing smart contracts. And one day I was like in a cafe, and sitting across from me was some dude with a Cosmos sticker, and that happened to be Shane. And I was like, Cosmos is really cool. And he's like, you know what Cosmos is? And I was like, yeah. And because at the time no one knew what Cosmos was.
Right. It was very obscure.
It was very obscure, yeah. Pre-IBC.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
so if you knew about Cosmos in 2017, you were definitely like really paying attention to the space.
Yeah, totally. But that's kind of like, how I got into Cosmos. And then like, I almost joined Shane's startup at True Story, but kind of felt like it was like a little bit NGMI, and we're not going to make it for those non-crypto people. But really liked Shane and thought like the technology was amazing, and so that's kind of how Stargaze started. Is like, eventually we all kind of like decided to like start a new thing. At the time it was called Rocket Protocol, but that was a terrible name, so we changed it.
Okay, so tell us about the timeline, because when Shane started building this, I mean, True Story was, when was that? That was 2018
that
when it was announced?
That would have been 2018, like 2019.
Yeah, that was around the same time when TCRs became more of like a meme-y thing.
Yeah.
The way that, some things are trending right now that won't last the test of time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 2018, and that was also at the same time as the hack out in Berlin, and that was when really Cosmosm was kind of birthed.
Yeah.
So was it around that time?
No, I think I met Shane like shortly after that. So like, and really we like really started talking and hanging out throughout 2019, and then Stargaze basically started at the beginning of 2020.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
Which a lot of people don't realize. People don't realize that we've been working on it for a really long time, but we've had a couple pivots, so
Right. I was sent a beta demo for the social network that was.
Yeah, we actually started out, building a social network. That's what we originally set out to do, was to build a decentralized social network, and it was all really great, and it actually like was kind of fully like working, and there's some cool videos online, but it was tough because Cosmos didn't have a DEX yet. This is pre-Osmosis. Right. It didn't have IBC, and we actually wound up having to rewrite the whole application because of the Stargate upgrade, which was very painful. So
yeah, I'm sorry to hear. What it's like non-backwardly compatible, totally brand new. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. So that was the birth of Stargaze.
Yeah.
And are you still involved with that project?
Yeah, I'm still like very involved with Stargaze. Definitely spending a lot more time at the moment on like Juno and DAO because I think that that's kind of what's most important for the ecosystem is like building out the ecosystem around Cosmwasm, all the dev tools there, all the, the wallets and bringing more developers into space. It's a very special time right now. We have the opportunity to bring over all this talent and tools from Terra into the real Cosmos ecosystem. And I feel like really need to focus on that effort. And Juno has a lot of funds to fund developers and cool projects. And, I think that that's where a lot of my focus is. And also on DAO. And, the great thing about DAO is it's Interchain DAO tooling, and don't be surprised when you see it on Stargaze as well. So,
very cool.
A lot of times, like, I always try to find, like, crossover that makes sense between, like, the projects I work on. And so, like, Stargaze needs DAO tooling just like, any other chain needs DAO tooling. So, like,
Okay, yeah. So, what is your vision of Cosmwasm, and like why is it so important to build an entire developer ecosystem around that?
Well, I guess to say it plainly, the EVM sucks. It's really bad. It's not very performant, and
Sure.
It's really hard for people to learn. Like Solidity looks very simple as a language. It kind of looks like JavaScript, but to actually understand Solidity, you need to understand how the EVM works, and that's actually a much more complicated like task. And so for people to become a good Solidity developer, they really need to like read through like the Geth source code and learn like all the different opcodes and like how things actually work. And it's just also not very performant. It's like, don't get me wrong, so I got my start as a Solidity developer, and it was groundbreaking for the time and led to like a lot of what we see in terms of smart contracts, but that doesn't mean it's like the end all, like be all of like smart contracts. Like I also got my start as a PHP developer because that was a way to like build websites back in the day. You built websites in PHP. And then like suddenly like, Node.js and like Ruby on Rails came along and like all these other like tools that like no one really builds websites in PHP anymore, though there's still websites that run on PHP. So I think kind of Solidity is the same way. It's like the first, it's going to be around it's not going away. But I do think that WebAssembly smart contracts are the future.
Oh, interesting.
They're a lot more performant by a lot. Like the WebAssembly has been highly optimized to run in browsers, and the whole point is that it should be faster than JavaScript. And so there's been all this effort and resources into making WebAssembly not just really fast, but also really secure as well, which is exactly what you want for a smart contract execution environment. Okay,
but would you agree or disagree with the notion that the EVM has a Lindy effect and that is not going away, despite perhaps...
Oh, I think that EVM is going to be around for a really long time. But I also see the rapid growth of the Cosmwasm ecosystem, and that we are, like, the big reason people choose the EVM today is that they're lazy and they want to copy and paste, like, smart contracts.
Right, they just want to, like, port it over.
And you kind of see this now where it's like all the actual good EVM developers, they're on Ethereum. Nothing original happens on, like, Harmony or, like, Avalanche or, like, Binance Smart Chain. It's all, like, derivative, like, clone stuff. Like,
right.
And the fact is, like, with Cosmwasm, we're already like building out the ecosystem a lot. We have a lot of chains that are using it, like Osmosis, Stargaze, Juno, Secret Network, and a lot more on the way. It's like really getting a lot of traction. And we're building up this whole library of smart contracts. We have NFT marketplaces, we have, decentralized exchanges, we have amazing DAO tooling, we have liquid staking protocols, we have NFT contracts, we have token contracts. Yeah. So all the like sort of pieces that, people really want when they're like starting a new chain those contracts are starting to, like, we're starting to reach like kind of contract parity with the EVM. And I think once we reach the contract parity, the fact is it's a lot faster to build in Cosmwasm, and eventually we're just going to like kind of blow it away in terms of like what's possible. Just because a lot more is possible in Cosmwasm. One of the things that really excites me about WebAssembly smart contracts as well is that you can use existing languages. So you can use a language like Rust. Golang smart contracts are also being supported. There's already a working example, and
what example is that?
It's in the Cosmwasm repo actually, or in
Does it have anything to do with GNOlan?
No, that's completely separate.
Okay.
Best of luck with that project, but I do think WebAssembly is a really great smart contract execution environment because you can use existing languages. And that becomes really practical. Like say you want to do like a really cool generative art NFT and you need some math library. Well, in Solidity, you would have to like rewrite that math library in Solidity, which would be a nightmare.
I see.
Whereas in Rust, I'm just like cargo add math library, and as long as it compiles to WebAssembly, I can use it. So I can use all these existing libraries and all the existing tooling, which is really great.
Got it.
And the cool thing is we can add even more languages to Cosmosm. So right now we have Rust and Golang is on the way. Those are great languages to start with. There's arguably a lot more like Rust programmers than there are Solidity programmers, and definitely a lot more Go programmers than Solidity programmers. So like already you're talking to like a much larger market of smart contract devs. And then like the fact is we can also support TypeScript. TypeScript compiles to, assembly script is a strict subset of TypeScript, and it will compile to WebAssembly. We can support C#. C# compiles to WebAssembly. We can support C++. We can support, say you want special properties in a language like formal verification. Well, you could use something like Scala because Scala compiles to WebAssembly, and then you get all these nice formal verification properties.
Oh, nice.
And so it really is like a smart contract execution environment that's like more performant, and like easier to develop with because people can use existing languages. They don't have to like, and it's easier to reason about too. Like you don't have like a lot of the weird quirks that like the EVM has, you know.
For instance?
Like there's a lot of limitations to the EVM. Like if you have a map, and a map is like, you can think of a map as like an array of objects or a list of objects. There's no way to iterate through a map in Solidity, really. Like it's not. I mean, there's also good reasons for like not wanting
what would you need to iterate through a map for?
Like say I wanted to like implement a smart contract query that like lists out like all the NFTs in a collection.
Okay. So you can't do like range queries or something like that?
No range queries, yeah. But Cosmosm has range queries. Cosmosm has indexed mapped queries. So let's say I wanted to make a query in a contract, like an NFT contract, for example, that would give me all of the NFTs owned by a specific user, or all of the NFTs with a certain trait.
Sure. Yeah.
So you can make these like indexes like you would in a database that allows for like more efficient queries inside the contracts themselves, which is really cool, not using an indexer. Though we also have like indexers coming to Cosmos, like the graph and subquery,
right.
But separate topic. But
So how are queries done in Solidity?
a lot of times people wind up using a lot of like indexers to like build like the sites people really, really know and love. That's just a fact. Sometimes there's some really basic queries, but
Sorry,
it's a little bit more limiting.
Is utilizing an indexer sort of an extra layer of abstraction that you would rather not have?
Top. Yeah, it's also not necessarily a decentralized layer. A lot of the indexers were pretty centralized to begin with. The graph has gotten better. The graph is a little bit more decentralized now, but when the graph started, which is what a lot of people use to like, build something like, a lot of the NFT experiences you see on Ethereum, the graph started as very centralized, and it's progressively decentralized over time. But but it's fundamentally like a separate service that's not on chain.
So I recently did talk to the Graph because they had recently announced that they're integrating Osmosis now after they've done the Cosmos Hub. What is the distinct value prop for the Graph to enter into this space, given that we have a proliferation of Cosmosm on a lot of the Cosmos app chains?
Yeah, I mean, what the Graph brings us is like integration with all the other tools that are currently using the Graph. So you have something like Messari, which is doing all these analytics. Like the Messari uses the Graph; they like work with them a lot. By having Graph index chains like Osmosis and Juno, that means all the data that's generated is showing up in those analytics tools. Otherwise, they would have to go out of the way and build a whole custom like integration to like go get that data, which they're not going to do. And then Cosmos gets left out of like DAO tooling stats, for example. It's like, and so just having it integrated into like all these different types of analytics tools that are like being built with the Graph already that's absolutely huge for the ecosystem. And then it's also great for like dev tooling as well. Like you can build like really nice like dashboards and stuff with indexers. Like, so like if you use DAO today, like it's all actually direct on-chain queries. But if we wanted to like make a bunch of like a dashboard, like an overview of all the DAOs, like, and we want to have metrics like total liquidity locked in DAOs, like how many tokens and what's the value that's locked in DAOs over time, and we want to make a chart for that. Like that's where we need an indexer, you know, because we have to aggregate all this data across all these different DAOs. So that's what the graph is really good for, and it has like a really great developer experience around it. So
yeah, okay, so you know, given that, let's say in a couple of years from now that, you know, there is like good data analytics tools and indexers readily available to like index all of this blockchain data, do you see machine learning kind of coming in and doing its thing?
yeah, totally.
We're going to make it more efficient for the IRS to come tax us? I'm just kidding.
I guess, but you know, that's probably inevitable.
Right. Yeah, that's
like,
that's going to be like one of the
like
primary
they've got the
uses.
guns, so you know.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
And the tanks and like everything else. So,
This is
you know,
true.
It's just yeah.
Yeah. So we.
Happy. That's a really happy topic. Yeah.
Sorry, we went there. Yeah. Okay. So all right. Let's talk about DAO now.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you just give us a high level overview about that and what people can do with it?
So DAO is building interchain DAO tooling for the Cosmos. That's like the one sentence, but it's really like next gen DAO tooling. Like DAO is like going to enable some things that like just don't exist on any DAO tooling at the moment.
I mean,
it's also no code DAO tooling, which is the thing is
no
like
code.
You can be a coder and use it and integrate it into your DeFi protocol. So, but you can also like it's designed so that anyone, they don't have to know any code. They can just come and start a DAO. You know, do things like launch a token or have like an NFT-based DAO or like a membership-based DAO. They can. There's also a nice little UI that allows them to do things like stake tokens as a DAO or claim their token rewards or like send tokens, mint tokens, instantiate smart contracts, and then eventually, like coming soon, is doing things over interchain accounts. So one of the really cool things about DAO is because it's built with Osmo, it has built-in support for IBC. And so this enables like a bunch of really awesome new things. So DAO on Juno can launch an NFT series on Stargaze or LP its treasury on Osmosis and like take its treasury and put it to active use and yield farm, you know? It can do things like deploy an application on a Kosh, so run its own chat server in a really decentralized way or like host its own website without having to put in a credit card to like AWS under like a business account. It can, you know, stake tokens on the Cosmos Hub or, you know, just do anything that you can do over IBC. Like that's pretty cool.
Okay, so is this specifically a function of IBC, or is there another reason why you're able to do that sort of seamlessly cross-chain?
I think it's because of Cosmosm and IBC. So those two together.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and would the Cosmos Hub need CosmWasm in order to receive whatever inputs you're trying to get it to do?
No, I mean, it has support for interchain accounts. So with interchain accounts, it can expose the things it wants to expose over interchain accounts. And, you know, Cosmos Hub doesn't need CosmWasm for people to, like, you know, stake Atom on the hub with the DAO.
So when any potential app chain in the Cosmos ecosystem has interchain accounts, then it could potentially be a recipient of whatever a DAO on Juno wants to do.
Yeah, like a DAO on Juno could, like when interchain accounts come to Secret Network, a DAO on Juno could, you know, do things on Secret Network if they want. Or, that's the really great thing about interchain accounts is it really expands the composability of the Cosmos, which is really, really cool.
Can you talk about more about the use cases? Like if a user comes in and, I don't know, has some sort of, what kind of application would a user come in to use DAO for, like in a cross-chain scenario? And and does it open up possibilities for like multi-hop, you know, cross-chain DAO actions?
Ooh, there's a lot in that question. So maybe we want to like break it up a little bit. like maybe the first part is like what sort of what would people use a DAO for, or like, or
I guess I'm particularly interested in, let's say, like smart contract calls.
yeah,
Right. You know, if I wanted the privacy properties from Secret, and you know, I do something there, and then I want to do some sort of like a swap on a DEX like Osmosis or something.
yeah.
You know, is there some reason I would use DAO to do that?
Yeah, I think for that to work, you would need like a good like IBC router. You know, IBC is definitely like an emerging kind of thing, and like, yeah, you'd have to. It would get a little bit tricky. Actually, I think you could do it, but it's like when if you know, like hops in IBC is like, you know, kind of a interesting subject, and this is why like Jack is working on like the IBC router, because when you like do something on Secret and then send tokens from Secret Network to Osmosis, and then it can just get a little bit messy, but it's definitely like possible. It's workable.
But yeah, can you foresee any reason why somebody would want to do it that way rather than just staying on one app chain to do whatever they need?
That's a really good question. I think most of the time people will just do like, you know, kind of one app chain at a time. Like you want to do.
I imagine so, yeah.
I'm not saying that there is not a use case for it. I've just been so focused on like the just basic Interchain use case. I haven't thought about like the advanced level of like, yeah, send stuff to Secret, like mix it, send it to like Osmosis, like do some arbitrage thing, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking through, you know, it's just in the future. Let's say we have the internet of blockchains has matured so much in 20 years in the future, and we have like IBC routers. So people would potentially be using this like meta blockchain network as like the internet, right? So
Yeah.
so you could potentially just like leverage multi-hop blockchains just to get like a certain feature out of it. You know, if I wanted,
Yeah, sure.
if I wanted like to mix some transactions, I suppose, through a Tornado Cash like thing.
Wow, this is getting really spicy really quick. Wow.
I'm sorry. Okay, so yeah, you know, this is the reason why this is at the top of my mind is because so recently there was a viral video that came out in the news, and it was about a San Francisco man. He performed some armed robbery on a person.
I shouldn't be laughing. I'm sorry.
Right, and so he took some crypto, but didn't know to use Tornado Cash, and so was quickly identified.
Yeah.
So you know the question would be, you know, how efficient would someone like that be able to use these types of toolings to like obfuscate their tracks, I suppose?
I think obfuscation is basically impossible because we all use these like devices that like try to be private on the internet. Like we can definitely do a lot better, but it's basically like even people that use Tornado Cash, like there were these people on Ethereum that launched this like rug NFT project. And they got arrested even though they used Tornado Cash, because you can still like monitor all the different like addresses that go in and out of it. Like, you know, it only provides like a certain amount of privacy. And then, you know, who knows like to what level like, you know, our phones and stuff are like observed, and like how people are like, people can correlate all these different data streams in, you know, like I still think privacy is really important and something we should definitely be working on, but you should never assume that just because you use a mixer that it's like untraceable. Like everywhere you go on the internet, you're just leaving around little footprints, and you have to go to an insane level of detail. Like even a VPN is like not enough. Like,
sure,
you know, it's just like there's so many different things they can do to like fingerprint you and like track you and like you know,
through your ISP.
operating system, like screen size, like there's just like all these different variables that like,
Wow.
So yeah, fun stuff.
Fun stuff.
The primary use case of DAO is like, I mean, like you can use DAO in like composition with something like Secret Network or Penumbra when it launches, but the primary use case is to like actually just build better governance tooling, like better DAO tooling that will allow for like kind of more complex, efficient like organizations. Like one of the things we're really starting to use at Juno is we're using a feature of the new DAO contracts called subDAOs, where a DAO can actually have like a parent or like an admin, if you will, that has like basically like execution rights over the DAO. So the way we use this is like when we're going to launch a Hack Juno subDAO. There's going to be a governance proposal probably like in the next couple of days. And that group is going to be tasked with organizing Hack Juno, promoting the hackathon, educating people about it. They're also going to be like handling all the nominations and paying out the rewards, and there's a large amount of rewards for Hack Juno. It's like over $2 million in Juno. Like it's pretty good. And that's after the price has gone really down, but but like, so basically like we're going to launch a governance proposal, and that governance proposal will instantiate a DAO subDAO that's owned by like the main Juno community pool or the main Juno like core governance module. And the core governance module has like, if governance doesn't like what that subDAO is doing, say everyone goes off and like they're not really like being active or making like judicious use of the funds, like they can vote to like revoke the subDAO basically, which is pretty cool.
Can you talk about more about that?
I think subDAOs are just like we need to like create like more complex governance structures. We're going to scale decentralized organizations. Like if we have like everything flat and everyone votes on everything, it just completely gets unwieldy and really quick. Like
I agree.
Like if you like have to have everyone on the Juno chain vote on like paying like someone who designed a poster, like or like put on a conference, and to put on a conference, you need to like pay a bunch of different people, and that's like a lot of different proposals. Like people will really quickly get voting fatigue if everyone has to vote on everything all the time. And so the whole point of like subDAOs is you can think of them as like departments or teams or groups, and you can kind of create these like nested relationships of organizations that can create like much more complex like governance structures. So like with the new DAO contracts, you can actually create something like a C corporation where you have all the token holders. They're like the shareholders. They elect a board. The board is like the overseeing body. They elect some executives, like a CEO or whatever. I don't know why you would actually want to do this, but you could. And then the CEO like hires all the employees, and there's like a nice hierarchy there. Like everyone's ultimately accountable to like the shareholders.
This is all on chain.
All on chain, yeah.
Okay, so
everything on DAO is all on chain.
Okay.
Because transactions on Juno are actually like affordable. You can afford to vote on chain. It costs less than a cent. And we have a team that's working on how we can use the fee grant module to pay gas on behalf of users for voting in a DAO, which is really great for like onboarding. So say I start like a really cool art DAO, we're gonna like do an experimental art show with like really cool DJs, and it's gonna be a really cool party. And I wanna give that token to all my friends, but they don't have Juno. And that's sad because now they can't vote in the DAO, but they can. We'll like use, fee grant and like basically allow it for the DAO. The DAO will have some Juno, like it takes like one Juno in its treasury, and now it can pay gas on behalf of all the users, which is really great for onboarding. So,
okay. So the people wouldn't need to actually fund it themselves, you mean?
I think that's the goal, is we want people to launch DAOs and be able to just like, I'll just give you the DAO token and you should be able to go vote and interact with it without having to worry about like getting Atom and going to Osmosis and swapping it for Juno and then sending that Juno to like,
Who's issuing the DAO token?
Whoever's launching the DAO.
Whoever's launching the DAO.
It's up to each DAO. And we have a bunch of different types of voting systems now, which is really cool. So we can have NFT-based DAOs. So if you own an NFT, you can form a DAO around it.
Okay, so like a social network, or like a social club, like Bored Ape.
Like Bad Kids, Bad Kids DAO. Or like
After school club.
a Bad Kids After School Club. Yeah, wow, that sounds great. It was born here today, actually. Yeah, so you could make...
You hear that, Bad Kids?
Yeah, you can make Bad Kids After School Club. We can do, obviously token-based voting. Like we can have people launch tokens. We actually support. We have a contract right now in the works that's going to support staked native tokens, which is going to allow for, something like like Ion DAO or like any other DAO where there's like a native token that you want to build a DAO around. We have just like straight up multi-sigs, which is just sort of member-based, which are really cool. So you can
So if I wanted Ion DAO to do this, how would I do? Would I have to transfer Ion DAO over IBC or?
No, I think the great thing about DAO is it's written in Cosmosm, and we plan on going multi-chain. So it's the DAO DAO team is like really into the Cosmos, and like Juno's going to be like the home of DAO DAO in some sense, like because we're it's a great place to experiment, and we have this really crazy DAO games competition, which is coming later in the year, and we're going to test out a bunch of really crazy ideas. Like, what do you think about incentivized voting? Like, what if we paid people to vote? It's kind of a crazy idea, but we're going to try it out, and it's going to be fun. But yeah, like Juno's a great
bribing?
place. Yeah, it might cause a bunch of stuff, but I think Juno's a great place to experiment and like try out a bunch of stuff, and some of it might break, and some of it might be like a great success. You don't really know until you like run a bunch of experiments, but but for the stuff that's kind of mature, like we plan on deploying that on Osmosis, deploying it on Stargaze, deploying it on like other Cosmos chains. Like we really want it to be like DAO tooling for the Cosmos. Like
interesting. So let's talk about this idea, and this is starting to emerge, which is going multi-chain in the IBC ecosystem, right? Just in the same way as Compound, Aave, they're going multi-chain in the EVM ecosystem on the different L2s and Avalanche, for example. Same thing is sort of happening here, and yours, DAO DAO's prime example of this. Talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's a huge and great opportunity. I think there's a lot to figure out on what this looks like, and this is actually something that I hope we can like provide a really good example to for the rest of the Cosmos ecosystem. And the way we're kind of thinking about it is doing token swaps. So there's going to be a DAO token. I'm not going to give too many details about that because, maybe you'll be able to tease some out of me, but. There's going to be a DAO token, and we are going to like swap it with other DAOs, other projects where we want to, provide like DAO services to, basically. So like, and this is really great because this is like a really great way for those communities to get DAO token, and also any when you do a DAO to DAO swap, it actually creates like aligned like economic incentives between like both parties, I think in Cosmos, like, it's great that we're all like sovereign chains, but we do need to like kind of form alliances and like collaborate a little bit more sometimes.
Yeah.
And so like by having like, like token swaps, you can like create like these sort of like aligned economic interests, and like it's a really great way to like sort of like build out an ecosystem.
Absolutely.
So it's one of the things we're really thinking about with DAO is like we want to kind of like pioneer this model for the Cosmos. It's kind of already starting to happen in Ethereum. Ethereum's always on the cutting edge of like sort of like stuff that's happening, but I think we can really like build it out in a very exciting way on the Cosmos. And so one of the first things that's going to happen after the DAO DAO token launch is we're going to take a very, very large amount, and we're going to like make a token swap with the Juno community pool. And this is like, this is to like support development of like really awesome, like cool new features, to make like the UI better and better, to do things like launch mobile apps and things like that. But it's not just asking for money with nothing in return, We're not only providing like the services and like building out this amazing DAO tooling, but we're also providing like economic value and voting power in return. And then the community can decide to do with that whatever they want. They could airdrop it to their users. If it's like Osmosis, they might decide to like use it to create like a liquidity pool. If it's like you're just I think it's also really interesting as a model for like smaller DAOs. So we have a bunch of DAOs that are coming out of DAO that are really interesting. So there's like a design DAO, And a great way to support Design DAO. Design DAO is like a service DAO. They're like sort of like, you can think of them as consultants, but I think that's an offensive term. I think they're more than consultants. They're free agents, working on cool stuff. But they have a DAO, and that's how they organize themselves. And DAO can swap some DAO tokens with Design DAO, and then suddenly they're also like helping us like build out all our products, and we're trying to create like these kind of like win-win sort of scenarios.
Okay, so you've really thought about how to scale up an organization past what's just in your direct, I guess, startup or...
Yeah, definitely. I think this is something that's like I've really learned a lot from like Juno, including the like super chaotic moments of Juno. It's like the need to like really evolve like governance and like how we organize ourselves in like a very decentralized like kind of fashion. Like the fact that like Juno doesn't really have like a core company around it or whatever in like the same way that like kind of Stargaze does, like it's definitely much more chaotic, but it's also like the opportunity to like really kind of try out some new ideas of like how we organize ourselves in a very like decentralized way. So yeah, helped me think through some of this stuff, and I don't really have like all the answers yet, but we're gonna try out some cool ideas, and hopefully they'll work.
Yeah, I mean, so the tough part is prime example of treasury swapping failing is when Avalanche and Terra did a treasury swap. It was, something to the tune of like hundreds of millions of dollars. Avalanche got wrecked, and Terra still held on to their AVAX, and it was still actually worth something.
I mean, I think there's definitely risk when doing token swaps, but there's risk in investments as well. And I think that it's definitely an extreme example. I'm not going to say that there's no risk in doing token swaps, but I still think that the advantages outweigh like the potential like disadvantages. Like it's a really great way to build like close ties between ecosystems and people, because we are like, I kind of think of all these Cosmos chains as kind of DAOs in some ways. Some more or less. Like Juno's on the pretty extreme side, and like some are like more kind of based around like companies, but they're all like sovereign chains with their own governance. And so I think having coalitions between all these chains is great, and one of them might fail. It's just like that's how it is. But not all of them won't fail. Like we're probably gonna do some token swaps with DAO that we'll like look back on and be like, that was a mistake, but we'll also do some and be like, that was an amazing kind of thing. And at the end, you hope it like balances all out, and that you're creating enough value as an ecosystem that like everyone's like massively up. That's kind of like the goal. But I'm not gonna pretend there's like definitely the risk of like doing a token swap and then the other thing like turns out to be kind of worthless. But in the case of DAO, I think we're like a good group to do it, is because like we don't have a white paper. We actually just like build stuff and like you can use it today. And like the V1 contracts that are audited and like the new UI are like coming out really, really soon. And you'll be able to actually use it and see that it's useful, and it's actually providing value. It's not vaporware. We definitely should be wary about like doing token swaps for like projects that haven't launched or people that don't really have a reputation, because then there's just a much higher risk of like exactly what happened with like Terra and Avalanche, where that project collapses and then
Well, it's tough though, right? Because I would consider Do Kwon and Terra to be really high reputation. Therefore, there was like
totally.
Just unadulterated trust in a single person. So that's just a human problem that no technology can solve.
True.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, DAOs are humans at the end of the day. Like,
absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's really human nature that's powering these things.
We're just using like technology to like help people like coordinate a little bit more and do it a little bit faster and more efficiently. Like the really cool things about DAOs is like you can spin them up so quickly. You can easily create an agreement without having to like go through the whole process of back and forth between lawyers and then reviewing all the paperwork and then like signing the thing and sending the email over and then sending like a wire.
Yeah, if something goes wrong though, what legal recourse does somebody have if all they have is a DAO?
This is a really great question. And one of the things we're actually working on a lot and really would love more help on, if there's like listeners in the audience that would love to be part of this effort, is like trying to create like better legal wrappers around DAOs.
Yeah.
So like being really clear up front of like what the expectations are for participating in the DAO, like what the rights are, what the risks are, and like who bears like, just like laying out all the different responsibilities. And you can think of it as sort of like a charter, a constitution. This is also something that like really came out in like the wake of Prop 16, is like, how do we like think about what we're doing and be very clear about like how everything is, supposed to work? Because like a lot of people otherwise have really different interpretations of like what's going on. And, if everything's going great, no one has a problem. But when like something bad happens, then that's when things get really interesting. And so we're actually working with like a bunch of lawyers to like try to create like better legal wrappers for DAOs and also like better templates. Like, so we're really working with a group on creating proposal templates for things like token swaps, like making sure that we're including all like the right language about like the real risks that exist and like exactly like sort of what's happening in the proposal. And I think we can build out more and more of that. One of the things that I'm also really excited about with DAO is like the new contracts are very like with sub DAOs, they're very, very composable, and you can create these very complex like structures that completely mirror like legal entities that exist in the real world. So say you wanted to create something like a Cayman Islands Foundation. Well, the way that works is you have someone and they sit on the foundation board and people give them instructions to do something. That one person controls all the money. They can't do anything themselves, but they get instructions, and then they basically check to make sure it's like not money laundering or anything like that, and then they approve it. We can actually create a DAO that like votes to give that person the instruction, and then we can give them like sort of an approver role, and they can just approve it. And now we've created a much more efficient system that doesn't involve email, that doesn't involve like paperwork, that doesn't involve like wire transfers from banks, but is completely like legally compliant. Now we can also do that for like U.S. corporations and stuff too, whether it's like an LLC. You basically like, in LLC you have corporate memorandums where you like sort of file the intention that you want to do something as a group, like, and so we can sort of create like, again, a DAO structure that mirrors the legal structure, and those should be like completely compliant. So, and then obviously there's a lot to be done in terms of like building out tooling around DAOs for managing things like payroll, and if you're like doing an LLC or a C corporation in the United States, you're going to need like tools for like calculating taxes and stuff like that. But those things are being like worked on and will be built. So
well, cool. Yeah, it sounds like the dream of this project is really to turn smart contracts actually into contracts themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I still think that there's going to be like completely, and I think it's still valid. I'm really a strong believer in this, that there should be like DAOs that don't have a legal entity. I think that's fine. For like, I mean, it depends on what you want to do. If you want to like build a housing cooperative and like make like a rent to own kind of situation, or like buy like physical property, you're gonna need a legal entity for that. It's like you have to interface with like the existing state. But if you're trying to do like an internet gaming guild or whatever, like I think that should be like allowed to exist.
Fine,
like if it's purely online, I think that like the internet is kind of its own jurisdiction. And the fact is, these DAOs, like, who should they pay taxes to? Like, they have international members from all over the world, and certainly those individuals, if they like sell tokens, they should definitely like abide by their like country's laws. But like it's hard to like like if you have members from like Switzerland and Guatemala and Korea and in the United States, like which country dictates the and do they have to comply by all of them? That would be like, I think there's probably a lot of work to do on like just teasing out, like, and oftentimes like the actual law comes a lot slower than the innovation, but I think there is definitely a legitimate use case for like DAOs that are entity-less. I'm actually a huge fan of entity-less DAOs, but yeah, it's a long topic. We could talk the whole talk about this, but
yeah, I actually do envision a future like 40 to 80 years into the future when we've really gone past the inflection point where like blockchains really kind of dominate the meat space, because all of us are in the digital world. At that point, we're going to be like in the metaverse. So at that point, why wouldn't legal contracts actually sit on chain? I suppose, even though we don't really need it. But anyway, that being said,
I think that DAOs will replace legal contracts by that time. It's going to take a really long time, but I just think it's actually more transparent. It's way more efficient too. Like anyone who's like ever done this kind of stuff, the amount of like it's just so slow, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I think that the people that live and work with these things now, it's kind of like the transformation of the internet. Like when computers first came out, like people didn't understand how they would make us all like way more efficient. They're like, what? We got paper, we've got like filing cabinets, like, you know.
I was on that exact same train.
And it's kind of like, I think that's the exact same metaphor for what's happening here is we're just making all that stuff like way more transparent, way faster, and way more efficient. If I file a document with the state, to try to get a copy of that document is just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Like, you have to like submit, like you have to call someone up during business hours, you know, they have to like, you have to like usually like fill out a form and like pay them, and like they take a while to get back to you. And like, there's like this huge process, like, and then there's all these like also unneeded kind of gatekeepers that are like extracting a lot of like value from people and really limit people from like forming like legal organizations. It's one of the, I think, sad parts of America right now is like, if you're super wealthy, you can like pay a bunch of lawyers to like set up all these complex legal structures and like pay no taxes like Jeff Bezos. But if you're like poor middle class, like you can't even afford like the most basic lawyer to like set up like a partnership kind of like thing, or like and so like I think this is also about like accessibility and sort of justice and like bringing like a more fair and efficient like system to the masses. And it's gonna take time. It's gonna be a little bit messy, you know. It's like I'm not a utopianist. I don't think like everything with DAOs is going to be like just rosy and it's all going to be better and like peachy, but like nothing ever is. But you know, I still think that there's progress that can be made. So. Yeah,
absolutely. So I want to go back to your template comment about, you know, how DAOs are leveraged. So I recently bought a house.
Cool.
And
congrats.
Thank you. And it's within an HOA.
Okay.
So you know, it's one of those.
I know
so you
how
have
it
to
goes.
you have to deal with the HOA. And what I found out was that those HOA contracts that they make you sign, it's a templatized contract.
Yep.
And it was written by like one guy back in the day, and suddenly all HOAs use it now.
Yep.
And the legal verbiage just makes it so that it kind of fucks you as the homeowner.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, you know, how do we avoid that situation when it comes to DAOs? Because like a lot of times it is social consensus that kind of wraps around a certain template or a thing, and then they just like keep reusing it over and over, and then the switching cost is really high. Yeah,
I do think that one of the great things about DAOs is also a chance to like rethink and renegotiate some of these arrangements. You know?
Oh, I would so hope so. I hate HOAs.
I think that the landlord-renter arrangement is really terrible. Like, and especially as like home ownership prices go up.
And the HOA homeowner arrangement as well.
Yeah, it's really
even
bad.
If you are a landlord.
And I think that DAOs are a really great chance for us as society to like come together and think about like, well, now we can make rent to own possible. Now we can like actually think about like how people might fundraise differently to like collectively buy like an HOA or a housing apartment, or now we can kind of rethink, you know, some of the details of these contracts, you know.
I would love to revolutionize HOAs. I hate them.
So yeah, I think those things are possible, but you know, ultimately it comes down to like who's in like the driver's seat for this kind of stuff, and like you know, that's why I really try to get like a lot of people excited about DAOs in this movement, because we need like the right kind of people driving these efforts, you know. Otherwise we just get more of the same, you know.
Absolutely.
So a lot of work to do there. No clear answer, but you know, if you're listening and you're interested in DAOs and you want to work on this stuff, like do it.
Yeah, definitely. We have a whole other, you know, 2 decades and more to really work and innovate on this stuff. The space continues to evolve. So actually, okay, this is the final thing I want to ask you, and this is the elephant in the room, and you opened the door for this actually.
Sick.
Prop 16, talk about it.
I think Prop 16 was groundbreaking, and it was like really messy and really dramatic, and one of the most stressful periods of my life. I literally got fucking death threats. Like literally I had to face like tons of angry people. Everyone was angry at me. The yes people were angry at me. The no people were angry. Everyone was angry. But
why
really,
was that?
Say what?
Why was that?
Because I think it was a very poorly written proposal, which didn't help. I think that's one of the big...
It was written by you?
It was not written by me. I did not review that proposal.
And why did you get all the blame?
I think everyone was just mad at everyone, and it's like just sort of just being
just
like,
mad at each other.
yeah, and also being like a member of like Core One, you know, or just like one of the founders of Juno. It's like definitely caught like a lot of like flack, you know, and there were a lot of weird conspiracy theories going around, and like a lot of. It was not a healthy discussion, but it also like I think was a really important and like groundbreaking thing for like crypto in general and like on-chain governance. It was the first time since like Sunny wrote like the Cosmos governance module in 2019 that people were really thinking differently about how we want to change some things in that. Like, I think that was fine for the time it was written in when Cosmos was a lot smaller, but as Cosmos chains get a lot bigger, like, you know, everyone's using the same governance module and it has these like big powers in it, and maybe we need to think a little bit more about how we do governance. I mean, that was really one of my biggest takeaways is like, you know, that proposal would have been a lot better and a lot less dramatic if it was actually like edited and went through like a drafting phase before it went on chain. Like, it had no evidence in it. It had like this really emotional language that wasn't even like really factually correct, you know. At the same time, it did really strike a nerve. Like, you know, there was like, you know, it was not the intention to like give Juno to like centralized entities. Like, you know, it was not, I mean, which was not mentioned in Prop 16. Prop 16 was like they gamed the airdrop, and that's not the case. It was more complicated and nuanced, and like the proposal was just so badly written, and so.
And who wrote it?
I think it might have been Wolf and some others, but he's since I think he's you know, he's come to realize that like that wasn't good. He like apologized for it and admitted his mistake, and to me like that's good enough. So
so
no one's perfect, like. And
can you go into the nuance of this? Because I've actually I have actually reached out to Juno people to speak about this topic.
Cool.
No one's responded, but then.
All right. Well, I'm here.
You're here, so let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it.
What were the nuances of the story?
So the nuances of the story were like, you know, we did this airdrop, and it was meant to be like an airdrop to atom stakers, and we deliberately ruled out centralized exchanges, and with the intention that like, you know. And we also implemented a whale cap because we wanted like the distribution to be like pretty, you know, like a little bit more equal. Airdrops are really hard though. It's really hard to get an airdrop right, and we don't have like indexers or really great data tools for Cosmos. This is changing, but at the time we didn't have it, and it was really hard to like go through and see like, oh, all these accounts are associated and like owned by like one person, like, and. Yeah, there was an entity, CCN, and I'm not going to make too many like claims about like or judgments about them. You can go out and read the facts. There's Joe Abbey put together a lot of really great research that's pretty nuanced. Like he went out flat and said like, you know, the accusation in Prop 16 is bullshit, but like there's a lot more here. And I will say that like when action was taken, all the really big validators like, you know, Stakefish and others, they did their research. They actually talked with like, you know, the entity in question, asked them a bunch of you know, questions, and they signed the block. So, you know, I think that like it was, and to be fair, like that they like, you know, they still made out like bank anyway. You know, it's just that. I think one of the cool things about on-chain governance is if mistakes happen, we can vote to fix them. Like, even in like sort of, eventually we came to resolution as a community after like fighting a lot, that like the thing to do was to like remove the funds. Like having 10% voting power on the network is like it's kind of a lot.
Oh,
and
it's devastating for
it's just like,
yeah.
Also like just like growing so much because he's getting all the staking rewards, you know, like, and eventually the decision was made to like put the funds in a smart contract so that we could have a little bit more of a deliberative process without like, you know, without this other like skewed voting entity, like, you know, and just kind of figure out a better solution because we needed time to figure out a good solution. Like, I'm actually really supportive of like, if there are like thousands of Japanese clients who these funds really deserve to go to, well, let's get them to him. Like those are the rightful like people of the Juno airdrop, you know, it's like, shouldn't be like, you know, let's get it to those people. Like, but we need to like, it's going to take time to like figure out how to like do the auditing. Like we're gonna need some like trustful third party. Like no one really trusts like CCN, probably for like good reason, but like we need a trusted third party to like, you know, if that's really their intention. I mean, I question why they didn't just do that or give like the funds to their clients in the beginning, but you know, anyway, it's a really long story. We could probably spend like a whole hour just talking about it because there's just so much to it. And then there was the smart contract bug. We had like literally, that was like also like a thing that had never been done before. I think it's similar to like the Osmosis halt recently. When you're doing something that's really difficult and not been done before, you're focused on all the really complicated things and no one checks like the really obvious stuff. Like, and yeah, like I wrote the smart contract verification code and there's this like hex code address and I like didn't run the command to check it and no one else did either. And
test vector?
What?
No test. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, the funds got sent to the wrong address. But again, governance came to the rescue, and on Ethereum, like those funds would be locked forever. You know, there's billions of dollars just locked in smart contracts. I think this is one of the shittiest parts of crypto UX. If something bad happens, there's nothing you can do about it. Everyone's screwed. Everyone lost all their money. Like,
why don't we have revocations as a primitive?
I think that they exist like in like using governance, but we have to evolve our governance to be able to handle that like massive power, you know? It's like, cause like, for example, with the Juno smart contract, funds sent to the wrong address, like there was a CoinDesk article written about it. No one wrote the article about how we voted to fix it. Like we voted to send the funds to the correct address and now that's where they are today. And actually, to give like Takumi and CCN some credit, they're trying to constructively actually work on like real proposals now to like get the funds to their clients. You know, we'll see how that all like, you know, turns out. Like, but I think that's the right thing. And you know, they still got like 400K Juno and all the other Juno that they sold before, so it's not like they're hurting too much. But probably with the price of Juno, everyone's hurting a little bit. But you know, but yeah, I guess my high level takeaways are like, it was really messy, and like governance is really messy because it's all about humans and we all have like different like views of things. It really highlighted the need to like rethink how we're doing on-chain governance as Cosmos chains, like thinking about things like on-chain constitution, on-chain charters, like thinking about what our rights are. Like even with the Osmosis halt recently, like the decision to like legally like go after like people that basically called some open source code, you know, is code law or like is there something else going on here? Like clarifying all the different relationships is like actually something we really need to think about and like work on, and like really just encoding like what the rules are of the chain and be very clear about those.
I think so far, how we've gone about with on-chain governance is sort of we've gone about it by using precedent rather than by any other actual policy or constitution.
It takes a long time to figure out this stuff. One of the sub DAOs I want to start on Juno is like a constitution DAO, which is like gonna like think about, you know, just like sort of like expectations around various types of things. Like actually, before we launched any sub DAOs, we had a proposal on Juno called Sub DAO Principles, which sort of just established that, you know, ultimately sub DAOs are fully under control of the community, that like all those funds belong to the community, you know, that they're like people there are working on behalf of the community, you know, because it's a privilege, you know, that's like they're using the like oftentimes sub DAOs will be using community funds, you know, to carry out their marketing or their events or whatever, and just making it really clear what the relationship is there. And I think there's a ton more work to do in that kind of stuff. And there's a lot more work to do in DAO tooling, which is like why like I'm so passionate about DAO, because I really think that we need better tools in order to make governance work. Like already with the Cosmos SDK, we have this bottleneck of like everyone has to vote on everything all the time and they get tired. You know, we need to like break things up into smaller groups. We need to like think a little bit more about the process for proposals coming on chain. Like we encourage people to use Commonwealth, and Commonwealth is great, but there's nothing that forces people to have a discussion before it comes on chain. People can still just like YOLO and just like post a proposal on chain. And so there's like a little bit more work to be done there. With DAO, we're actually working on like a proposal like draft process where like in MakerDAO, for example, things just don't go up to vote right away. They have to go through a whole process before it comes up to vote. And that's a DAO. In like the House of Representatives or any like sort of government, there's also a proposal, like a sort of a drafting process, if you will, before like something goes up to vote. That like a process like that would have made like Prop 16 less dramatic, because people would have written a much better proposal with like better facts in it, and like it would have been less extreme, and like, you know, it would have been nicer. But sometimes I think you need the really dramatic things to happen in order to like shift everyone in like the, you know, to actually make some change, because otherwise you just coast on like as is without really thinking about it. So
yeah, the unfortunate thing about the Cosmos governance module is that it does allow for the tyranny of the majority, and so it doesn't really have any sort of checks and balances in place. I think
that's actually not true. People have like asked me this question of like, you know, oh, well, governance can do anything. It's like complete like anarchy on like Juno and like Cosmos chains. Like, you know, it's not. We have like validators and people that run nodes, and you can think of them as like our Senate or like the ultimate like, you know, sort of judiciary. Like a lot of people like try to fudge Juno as like communist chain. They're gonna like take like rich people's ass. No, there's tons of people that have lots of Juno where it's like, no, this was about like an airdrop allocation that was like blatantly unfair and was like 10% of the network, and like, you know, should have been rolled out, and it's complicated. You know, it's not gonna happen. You know, the fact is like also a lot of, you know, like people that run nodes, like they ultimately have this check over the chain, and if they don't want to sign that block, they don't want to sign the block. They can easily like veto with 33% power, and that like proposal won't happen, you know. Or if like, yeah, I mean, validators are a big check on the power of like the tyranny of the majority. So
right, my only the only caveat that I see there is that so there is this heavy social pressure for conformity just because all of your votes are public. And so, you know, if there seems to be a, you know, consensus leaning one way or another, that's sort of where all of the gravity flows to.
Yeah.
Right? So it's,
I mean, this is just also true in real life. Again, these are like, you know, things that just happen in our own world too.
Right, but, because humans are running this thing.
I mean, you should try, like, if, you know, like, make a proposal on Juno to like compensate the wealth of like the top 100 wallets and redistribute it and see how it goes. Mm-hmm. Like,
well, yeah, I mean, so obviously like that's immoral, right? But what I'm saying is, you know, compared to in this paradigm, compared to proof of work, for example, where people, where the miners are the last say in the sort of checked and balanced system.
Yeah.
There's not this sort of social conformity force in there because they're voting anonymously and they're just upgrading or not upgrading their nodes.
Yeah. I mean that's just like you can also kind of like vote anonymously, like. I mean, you can just stop running your node. There are social pressures. There are social pressures in any sort of like governance system. One of the things we are working on with DAO is private voting. It's like really important to us.
I think that would be a key innovation.
Yeah, I think that would be really huge. It's going to take a little bit while because we're doing it like ZK style, and yeah, that stuff's a little bit hard. But but it's really important to us and something like we very much want to support, and that I think could go a long way in addressing some of that. But I also think that there's a lot to be said for maybe thinking about like dividing up certain types of votes. I think Cosmos SDK governance is kind of doing too much. Like it's doing all the things. Like everything from like funding a marketing campaign or is like, but then you also like have like things like software upgrades, you know? It's like, it's just like, you have everything from super like marketing stuff to like very technical things. And it's like,
the people voting aren't necessarily going to know.
The people voting are like
experts.
Not necessarily like, but I also think that to combat like, you know, like, there's just a lot more thought to be like done about all this stuff. And like my hope with like Juno is that we can like continue to be, we like it or not, we've just become like governance chain, and we're like going to embrace it, because I think governance at the end of the day, even though it's messy, it's a feature and not a bug. It's really awesome that like, you know, and I think it's just a really, really cool, awesome thing about like Cosmos chains in general. But, you know, with great power comes great responsibility, and we have to think about like how we want to structure that. And, you know, should everyone vote on everything? Well, this is a great thing about sub-DAOs is like you can create like different like groups that are responsible for like different kinds of things. We just need to go off and do some real thinking as an ecosystem about how we want to like divide up like responsibilities, you know, and like we could make it so that like the validators are a little bit more isolated about like chain upgrade decisions and things like that. Or, you know, if we want to, it's like, we have to just think about what it is we want. And it's like, with DAO, we're just trying to make the tools so that you can create all sorts of different kinds of organizations. Like if you want to create communism on chain, you can do it. I think it's permissionless, and that's like fine.
That's called the digital yuan, right?
Yeah. I don't know if that's communism, but if you wanted to like also do like, something that's like
Communists
higher,
are building that.
yeah, if you wanted to do like a super hierarchical organization where there's like a CEO or like one person on top, or if you want to create like a digital co-op, it's like the point is we're trying to create governance tools that can make all sorts of different types of like entities and arrangements and organizations of human beings, and different sort of economic incentives between them. Like that's why we're working on things like staking rewards, and which is already like working on like raw DAO, for example. But we're also working on things like incentivized voting, or like imagine if we penalize people for not voting, for not being active. Sometimes that makes sense. Every DAO is going to be like a case by case basis, depending on like what sort of properties they want. And like, it's just like no two organizations are the same, but we just want to build things so that we can support.
Sure, yeah. We should figure out a framework so that people could bootstrap more quickly than they are today, because everyone's bootstrapping with the same problem set, and they're solving the same problem over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's that process isn't streamlined yet.
Yeah. So, but there's a lot of other cool stuff too that we're working on too. One of the is custom proposal types. So like with the Cosmos SDK, you can't do like multiple choice proposals, for example.
Oh, right.
So like when Osmosis like chose its bridge, they had to do that really hacky thing where they're like, here, Axelar, yes, no, Nomad, next, yes, no, Gravity Bridge, yes, no. Like, it's not like,
right.
It'd be a little bit nicer if there's just one proposal and it's like choose one.
Yeah,
But
right.
also things like ranked choice voting and, quadratic voting. I think all these are really interesting types of systems that we can like bring to DAOs, and like that will help us create like better organizations, It's
absolutely.
like we don't need like, I'm not talking about like organizations like the state, though eventually you could probably use a Cosmos chain to like run a government, but they're just like groups of people, like companies, like clubs, like blockchains.
Yeah.
It's all really exciting.
Well, with that said, thank you so much, Jake, for coming on.
Thank you.
We are coming up on time, and so we will be back and see how this whole thing develops, and we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to do a follow-up.
Yeah, we'll see if Congress gets on chain and starts voting
we'll see.
with this stuff in the future.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.